Welcome back to another video here on the channel. What I'm going to recommend you do is grab yourself a cheeky drink, hot or cold, because this is going to be a little bit of a different video, as you can already tell by this photo in the background. What I want to do in this video is talk about racing. I want to talk about motorcycle racing, why it's important to me and why it might be important to you. And the first part of this whole story about motorcycle racing is to talk a little bit about my experience. Okay, so there's going to be a bit of a history lesson, history talk about what I experienced racing motorcycles in my life. I don't want to call it a career, but in my life. Okay, so it's gonna be a long video, guys. If you don't want to sit around for this long video, move along. But if you want to know what my story entails, how I got involved, what I did, things that I might have achieved, then stick around and we'll talk about it, because it's been a little bit evident in some of my videos that I've put out recently that I haven't really talked about where I've come from and now where I am running videos about the R7 and all of that. So let's get into it without further ado. So how did I even get involved in racing? Well, as you can see from this photograph, if you recognize, I'm just gonna look at my notes here. If you recognize this photograph, then kudos to you. This is a photo of the first corner at the Melbourne Australian Grand Prix in 2012. Now, I was very lucky that via work, I was sent from the UK to Australia to work on a machine that we produced. And during the time that I was there, the 2 weeks that I was in Australia, this Grand Prix was in the middle weekend of those 2 weeks. So I got to go and experience firsthand live the Australian Grand Prix in Melbourne, Albert Park, and see Lewis Hamilton and Jenson Button and Sebastian Vettel finish on the podium of this race. And it really, I don't know, it kind of shook me up a little bit. It kind of took me from being someone who had enjoyed motorsport for his entire life to actually wanting to achieve something within motorsport. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know whether it was going to be in cars, but somehow it inspired me to think, well, what can I do? Like, I don't want to just watch things anymore. I want to be involved in things. And so that was kind of the ignition, if you like, for my thought process. And it made me truly take that step of just being sat on the sofa watching things to actually wanting to achieve something. And so very quickly, because a few of my friends at work had also gotten their motorcycle license, I kind of thought, well, I either get a car and have to store that and trailer it to tracks, or I get a motorcycle, which is a lot easier to store and get to tracks. And that's just what I chose. I chose a motorcycle. And so fast forward to when I got my first bike. So my first motorcycle, not my first motorcycle, I shouldn't say that. My first motorcycle was a CBR 125, which I got in the UK, you can get like a learner's license, if you like, for a very small capacity bike. So it was a 125cc bike that I got, my first bike. But once I'd passed my full license to get motorcycles in the UK, I ended up buying this bike that you see in this picture, an SV650, as purely for track or potential racing. So I bought it off a guy. When we arrived at his house, he was fast asleep on the sofa. We couldn't wake him up. We were banging on the windows outside of his house to try and wake him up to buy this motorcycle that we'd agreed to come and buy. And he was, let's say he was in a bit of a bad situation, which is why he was selling the bike. He was in a rough situation that night. And so trying to wake him up to purchase the bike and get the deal done was a bit of an effort. But anyway, we did it, and I took this bike back, put it into my mate's garage, and it came out from that winter into the spring, kind of looking like this. It had a GSXR fairing, GSXR tail, and that was it. Took the lights off, you know. It was kind of a track bike, and that's what we rolled with. So this was the first bike, SV650. Took it on a few track days. It was honestly, the SV650, in my mind, achieved so many things. And you're going to hear about this in a minute, but it started out as my track bike. And so by 2014, so I remember Grand Prix in 2012 in Australia. By 2014, I'd already achieved my road license for a bike and had taken a race course, which back in those days you didn't need to do anything on a track. You just took a theoretical course at the track itself, mind you, and that gave me a race license. So by 2014, I was about to take my first race, which was on the SV650. Okay, so here's an image of me wearing my novice orange bib. So I'm going to take a wee dram here. This was me in my very first race event. This was held at, this track is a track in the middle of England called Darley Moor. It's an old aircraft track, and it's very much a triangular track. But it's where I got my license, so that's why I wanted to race for the first time. And here I am racing an Easter weekend at Darley Moor. I think it was an Easter Monday, something like that. Me and my mate turned up. He was kind of my support crew, and this was my first race event. I don't know what part of the day this was taken, this photo. But I had three races in the day. The two classes that the bike was entered in, like a mini twin or a thunder bike class. And the final race of the day was like a novice all-comers. And unfortunately, the final corner of the final lap of the final race of the day, I had a coming together with an R6 and ended up, the bike barrel rolled through the gravel. I got completely knocked out, and I woke up in the medical centre apologising to everybody for what had happened, making sure the other guy was okay, and I was the only one that was in the medical centre, completely unaware of what had happened. It turns out that, long story short, but the R6 had overtaken me. I was quite happy for him to overtake me. I was not in a mood to race him. But on that final corner, I braked later than he did because he was fast in a straight line, but slow in the corners, I guess. So he braked harder. He braked earlier, I braked later. So we were side by side. He came across to take the outside of the corner and pushed me into the litter, into the gravel pit. I had some kind of thought of, I need to jump off the bike at this point. I don't know whether I did or whether, physics had taken over at that point, and the bike was flipping over and I was gonzo. So I woke up in the medical centre and somehow managed to drive home. The bike wasn't in too bad of a shape. The front forks were bent, the front yokes were bent, but still, it hadn't really, it was such a great day, such a great experience, and was the first race day of my entire motorcycle story. And so it was a good day in that aspect, but it finished on a bad note. And that led me onto the next step of what I was going to do, because, you know, I have a family at this point. You know, it's not been a great, you know, advertisement for my career that I just immediately crashed out and knocked myself out on that first day. So I had a bit of a rethink. And so speaking with my partner at the time, my next solution for what I was going to do is in form of competitive motorcycle riding was to do hill climb events. Now, hill climb events on tarmac. So I know some people get confused with the whole dirt biking up a hill, but this was on tarmac. So bear that in mind. Okay, so hill climbing in the UK on tarmac is a very interesting competitive sport. You are not allowed tire warmers. The categories are kind of, or were set up purely in terms of engine size. So the 650 came under this like 700cc category, which meant you were kind of up against 600s, Triumph 675s, those kind of things. So the SV650 might not have been the ultimate choice for the category of engine size that it was in, but it's what I had, and I agreed with my partner that this would be a way that I could continue to compete, and would be technically a little bit safer because it was just me on the track at the one time, right? It was just me against the track, me against the stopwatch, no other people to run into, therefore technically safer than track racing. So I had a few years of doing that and had some successes. This is where I think this trophy comes in. So this is a trophy, sorry if it's not coming in focus. This is from 2015 in the Northern Bike Speed Hill Climb Newcomers Championship. We achieved second place in the whole championship on the SV650. So we did pretty well on the little bike there. This photo is taken at a place called Harewood Hill Climb. It is set in the kind of Yorkshire area. So it winds up the hill near a place called Leeds, and it's very picturesque, really good actual track. It has cars competing on the same day as the bikes, so it's a really good fun day. And you'll see that I've got wet tires on the bike, and again, we don't have tire warmers, so the best way to get traction from a cold tire is to use a very soft, very grippy tire. These wet tires were what everybody used, so that's why we're on wet tires. But there is an interesting, it's a very different kind of competition where you have to go from stone cold tires and try to run up this hill as fast as you can. And these tracks are pretty gnarly. So the other place that I raced hill climb was at a place called Oliver's Mount, Scarborough, North Yorkshire. It's England's last remaining road circuit. People like Guy Martin raced there, Dean Harrison, the TT, you know, legend that he is already, raced there. I've been and watched them a few times, but this hill climb took up a section of that track. Very tight, very, you know, the fences are like this far apart. If you make a mistake at Oliver's Mount hill climb, you're gonna be in a bad way. So it was a very interesting time, and you're on cold tires, but it taught me so many things. It taught me to not compare myself to other people. It taught me to try and get in a peaceful mind frame where I could just do my thing, not think about other things, but be very focused on what I was about to do. Because the hill climb run, my quickest time at Scarborough Oliver's Mount was 46 seconds. I'm going to look at a video in a minute. This is the hill climb track here at Harewood House. So this is the track at Harewood House. You get the idea of how tight the track is. And here I am in one of the corners at Harewood House, about to drop my knee on the ground. It's such a different thing. It's such a different thing to approach that 30, 50 seconds time, whatever it is, where you have to just go from cold tires to going as fast as you can. And it teaches you a lot of things. It teaches you about tire adhesion. It teaches you about ramping up your performance. It teaches you about grip levels, like I say, and just a mental strength, I think, that you need to compete in that situation. So it was a great time. I loved every single second of it. It taught me a lot, and yeah. All right, so let's do a little run up. This is the Oliver's Mount hill climb. It takes me 46 seconds to get up there, so it's not too long a video. Here we are on the start line. So when the light goes green, you can start whenever you want, and it's as soon as you break that lighting beam that the time starts. So it's all about getting a really strong start, which is obviously a good thing to practice for when you go racing. But again, you're on cold tires, wet tires, but still cold, so you have to be nice and careful. I often left my bike in the sunshine to try and get a bit of warmth in the tires that way. Anyway, we're into a tight hairpin here. Try and drive it up as hard as we can. You can see how narrow the track is, the fences, trees everywhere. It's a little bit, sketchy, but anyway, so hard braking into this chicane at the top of the hill here and trying to get this last little drive out of here was always good fun. And then across the line, and you get an immediate, response. You know how fast you've done. And in this case, I was screaming in my helmet because it was a great time for me personally on that day. So that is what you're dealing with. You've got to perform in that 46 seconds and get it as accurately as you can. It's a different experience. It's a great experience. If you can do it, go and do it. And I'll just leave it there. But that helped us progress in my career as a competitive motorcycle racer, and we got some trophies for it. It was a great time. That led us on to the next phase, and I'll come back to that in a second. So after a couple of years of doing the hill climbing, I managed to convince the partner that I could go back and do some short circuit racing. And in the UK, there is the kind of highest club level of racing, you could argue, is between 1 or 2 at this point, race organisers, one of which is called BEMSI or BRMC or something like that. And at the time, in this year, I'm not sure which year this is, but they had sufficient numbers of mini twins. So mini twins are 650 bikes, fairly stock, no engine mods, so Kawasaki's and Suzuki 650s. I would say 96% of the grids were SV 650s. They had sufficient numbers to run a main category mini twins and a rookie category mini twins. I would say on the rookie mini twin category, there was 20, 30 bikes on the grid still. So it was a great way as a beginner racer to compete on the same bike against, those who you were equal with. And that was why I chose the SV650 in the first place, because I wanted to compete against this category, the mini twin category, which had very strict regulations, dyno testing randomly during the weekend. So people were, on an even keel. That's what I wanted when I raced. I wanted to know that it wasn't the bike that was the winner, it was the racer. There are some degrees of that, I get it, but I wanted to know that it was me competing against other riders, not against other bikes, if you see what I say. So this is a race, rookie mini twins, one of the first races that I came back to. not the first race after my hill climbing, but we'll get back to that in a minute. But this was a race at my home track, Cadwell Park. If you know it, give me a shout out. Cadwell Park is a it's an amazing circuit, but it's very technical, and you'll see some of the elements perhaps when I play this video. But we are here starting in 5th position in this race, and this is where I finish on a podium. It's the first lap is the most interesting. The rest of it I kind of just sat in 3rd, but let's just play the first lap for you. All right, so we're starting from 5th. It's a cold, damp track. We're on dry tires though, kind of slicks. They are road-going race tires basically. So anyway, we managed to dive up here, get into 3rd place, and I've got the 2 ahead of me. The 2 ahead, the guy in the lead is Cam Harris. He currently races in the British Superbikes on the support classes on probably a 660 today. And guy in 2nd is Tommy Downs, great natural rider. He didn't compete for too many years, but was always great to see if I could get anywhere near him because he was super fast. But I do have some track knowledge here coming into this race, and it's good to have had practice on track days and the damp and stuff. So we're coming through the back section of the track now, and I'm trying to see if I can just tag on the back of these guys because I'm getting quite excited now. I'm 3rd place and I can see the lead ahead. So, but it wasn't to be on this day, unfortunately. They just had too much for me, but I still had a go look. So here we are through the gooseneck, braking from way back, almost getting to 2nd place, and oh, he chops my nose off, and that, you know, just delays me getting on the throttle there, and so they get a gap on me. And I do my best through the race to try and keep up with them, but they've been racing throughout the year already, probably for 2 or 3 races. And then I came along into this race and held my own, I think. Here we go over the mountain. No wheelies popped, I'm sorry. Not on this time. But again, you can see that we're still catching up with these guys. They are, the Cam Harris was a motocross guy, came onto road racing, and as I say, still racing today, doing very well. So it was great to race with these people. Or at least try to anyway. So that's the first lap done there, and that's kind of it. I was 3rd place overall. Pause that there, but you see how cool that first lap was, and I loved it. But anyway, I'm not going to bore you with too many videos and stuff like that. So let's see what else I've got to show you. Okay, so I want to show you this picture right here. This photo means so much to me. It still today gets me emotional, and I'll tell you why. This photo was taken at Donington Park, middle of England. This was the first race event that I did after my short circuit incident where I crashed, knocked myself out. The bike was damaged, had to get repaired. This was the first day back after all of that. This was an interesting day because the way that they did the grids was whoever entered early got ahead on the grid positions. So on this day in particular, the first race that I did was a dry race. You can see that this race that I'm talking about shortly is not a dry race, it's wet. But the first race in the dry, I was way up the grid, something like 8th, 9th place maybe on the grid of about 30, 35 bikes, okay? And so I started that race and dropped backwards. Again, I'm coming back from an experience where I've been knocked out completely, the bike's been damaged. And this is the first race event back after all of that. Yes, I've done the hill climbing, etc. in between, but still, here I am trying to compete against all these guys that are regular racers, and here I am up at the top end of the grid, and I just dropped back. Every single lap people were overtaking me. I started something like 8th, 9th, and I finished 21st, 22nd. You can imagine how disheartening that was. And I don't know why I stayed till the end of the day. This photo is taken minutes before the last, pretty much the last race of the day. It's another novice race where novice racers just go in and enter basically. And I'm at the back of the grid. I'm again at 21st, 22nd place. The heavens have opened, the rain has come down, and here I am thinking, should I continue racing? Is this really for me? Should I continue? And I don't know. Look at the eyes there. Look at the eyes on this guy. He's nervous, right? This is me nervous. I don't know whether I should be doing this. And this is why it means so much. I started the race, 21st, 22nd. Every lap in that wet race, I was overtaking people. If you know Craner curves at Donington Park, they are one of the most dangerous curves for wrecking your bike. If you crash at the Craner curves in Donington, your bike is toast. Go and look it up. If you're from America and you don't know what Donington Park and the Craner curves, Google it. I was overtaking people on the outside of the approach to Craner curves in the wet on the SV650. And I remember pretty much every single lap of that race, overtaking people and finishing up something like, I'm going to say like 11th to 12th place from 20th. And that was the moment that secured me continuing for the next 2, 3, 4 years of racing. If it hadn't been for this moment, racing in the rain, I would have just quit. I would have stopped. I wouldn't have carried on. So you can imagine why it's meaningful to me, because of all the memories that came afterwards. If it hadn't been for this moment right here, look at him. Nervous in his eyes, but still had something about him to make him go and race in that race. And everything that came afterwards was because of that race, because of what we achieved in that race. I just wanted to show you that photo. And if that's you, if you're in a position where you're disheartened or you have a bad day, this is me having that bad day, but the results that came from it lasted 2 or 3 years. So there's always hope, okay guys? Always hope, and take that with you wherever you go. All right, so let's move on. Right, let's jump straight into this race. So this is another race with Bemsy again, but this is when I'm, an actual club racer now. I'm not a novice anymore. This is the full mini twins class. And this is Brands Hatch Brands Hatch circuit, the small version, the kidney bean shaped circuit. And here I am. The guy in front of me is a guy called Will Green. He was essentially not quite a teammate, because he was with a team called Faith Fueled Racing and I was kind of a support rider for them. But, technically a team mate, I guess. So I'm actually trying really hard to keep up with him. Will has been consistently racing for a couple of seasons now, and I've been doing a few weekends on and off. So it's great to be able to keep up with him at this track. So I'm doing my best, and here I go for a little bit of a late move, but my exit is blocked, and so Will soon comes back past, and we'll cross the line again, watching out for the back marker. Whoa, there we go. And then I'm going to try and pull off this move. So if you haven't heard me say it, I'm kind of a late breaker. That's kind of where I make up time, is on the braking stage of a corner, not so much the exit. So I'm about to try something a little bit sketchy, 4 wide into this corner. I just can't get it up the inside, so he comes back across the nose of me. All good. And so I'm trying to get back to chasing him down again. So again, this was a weekend early in the year actually, and I was all set up to do kind of a few events through the year again, and you'll see in a minute that didn't quite happen. But this was, I was getting, this was kind of peak of my riding abilities at the time, and I'm riding pretty well. I had some better races this weekend than this one, even in terms of lap times. But yeah, it was just another chapter really that was great to spend time with the Faith Fueled racing team and just have weekends away with them. Just really, you know, part and parcel of racing is the camaraderie of those around you and meeting new people, having fun on track, but also the weekends around the race events. Super special, and just loved every single moment of those two. So I have a feeling this is the same weekend as what you've just seen in the video. Here I am, laid in the middle of the track, which is not a great place to be, obviously. What had happened here was, so I was racing my mate on the yellow bike, and we were coming up against back markers. He had navigated the back marker successfully, and I clearly did not. So I was up against the back marker. Well, I was up against the guy that I was racing with, who was between me and my mate on the yellow bike. The guy between us was on a pink bike, so that's what I'm going to refer to it as. The pink bike came up against the back marker, and I assumed he was going to go outside of the back marker. So I was going to stay on the inside and try to see if I could get any advantage by staying on the inside of the track. What happened was the pink bike didn't go on the outside, but instead slammed on the brakes with me right behind him. I reacted, but you know, clearly there's not enough time to react. My front wheel touched his back wheel, my bike went down, and here I am in the middle of the track. The result of that was a broken collarbone. So here I am at the start of the season. You know, if you were like a MotoGP racer, World Superbike racer, you would go to a doctor, your collarbone would be screwed together, and you'd be racing within 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. That wasn't the case for me. I had to let this heal for 2-3 months, which I did. And I came back after this, I raced after this. I can't quite remember how this season unfolded. I think I attended a few more of those national events. But ultimately, it was the beginning of the end of my UK racing adventure, let's just put it that way. I ended up doing a final event up at Croft race circuit. So I'm going to show you some footage of that now, and we'll give you a voiceover of that race. Okay, so let's talk through this video then. This is a race up at Croft circuit in the north of England. We're in a mixed grid here. There's 650s, 600s, etc. There's probably 5 650 bikes on this grid. It's the first time I've been at this track. This is kind of late 2019, and we actually performed very well. We got a number of first places races and an overall first place for the weekend's event, so that was great. And this race particular means quite a bit because it was a race where, you know, I could manage it. I actually felt like I was managing a race rather than being subject to things around me. I could pace myself, I could match other people, I could pick out where I needed to make moves or not. This guy is on a classic 600cc and is very quick in the straight line, but has unfortunately quite a bit to work out in terms of cornering, etc. But anyway, really great track up in the north of England. Again, first time here, but it was a great weekend. We met some great people again, and so anyway, let's talk about the race. This guy, he is my main contender throughout the weekend on the Carby SV650, and we had a great time battling each other, and he's just come back through for the lead of our category. So I'm going to try and make some moves and see where we get to by the end of the race. And both of us are getting affected by this guy on the 600 who's, you know, just making our life a bit harder. So again, I know where I'm stronger now, so I know that towards the back end of the circuit I've got some advantage on this guy. He's good out here, he's good through this back straight section, so I've just got to bide my time and just try to see what I can grasp out of this. I really want to win this race. I've been tailing him all race, but look, here comes the 600 guy from out of nowhere, steams up the inside of our first place guy. So I think I thought there for a moment that the 600 was just gonna get between me and my competitor, but thankfully he managed to get himself up the road at least. So now I'm determined. Now I know where I'm gonna make a move, and guess what? It's gonna be on the brakes. It's gonna be a bit of a lunge, as I kind of became a little bit renowned for, I guess, by those that raced against me. But anyway, I got a good drive out here, and I know now that I'm in a good place. All I have to do is brake a second later than him, or half a second, whatever it is, and there we are, through into the lead. But I know he's closing in on me. I know he's right there, and this guy on the 600 is going to affect me in some way, shape or form. And there he is, parked on the apex. So I'm concerned that the guy behind me is going to go up my inside, so I shut the door on the left, try and get across the finish line, and we get it, we get the win. And it was such a really great fun race that I remember. So a final few photos from my racing track day, you know, experience. Here I am, Kettlewell Park, getting my first ever tiny little wheelie over the mountain. You know, always an achievement. I just want to point out the stylish, you know, aesthetics here. We got a black and yellow bike, black and yellow helmet, the Guy Martin helmet. Classic, right? This is an interesting photo. So one track day that I attended, about the afternoon, this happened, and I had no idea that it had happened. You can see this photo taken by the track day photographer. The coolant plug, the way that you drain the coolant on an SV650 Gen 2, there was a screw-in plug in the side of the water pump, and mine had somehow come loose and exited stage left here. You can see it highlighted in the photo. Somehow they managed to capture this photo of the plug exiting from my bike and the coolant also exiting from my bike. I did not know this had happened. All I knew was that the bike was slightly harder to start for the next session. I could say a different phrase. I kid you not. I did one, if not two more sessions with no coolant in the bike. 20-minute sessions on track. No coolant, no coolant fluids in the bike. And this was like early track day for the SV650. It still raced after this had happened, no problems, for what must have been 15 races after this had happened. The SV650, if you can at least change the oil on it and look after it in some ways, I admit, look, something bad happened here. If you can look after it in all the other ways, it's an extraordinary bike. It's an extraordinary engine. I lost my coolant for 2, if not 3 sessions on track. I had no idea it happened until I saw this photo. And it survived. I don't know quite what happened. It's amazing to me how that engine survived, but it did, and it still produced good power after this had happened. And I just include this as a bit of a sort of testimony to the Suzuki SV650. We all know it's a great bike. If you know, you know, right? This engine. Oh, anyway, I'm going to stop talking, but there you go. So there's a photo of that. This is a photo of me at the, what corner is it? Barn corner, is it? Before the final straight at Kettlewell Park. This is one of my favourite photos. I feel like this is peak me of biking. I like this lean angle. I feel like I'm doing it justice. Call myself a racer at this point. The bike is well and truly leaned over on an off-camber corner. I just love this photo, so I'm sorry, but I just had to include it, okay? So, this is the takeaway, right? This is where I started. This is a photo of me on my first race event with my race license, April 2014. We're now in October 2024, so it's 10 years later from this moment. The question I ask myself is, what do I do now? I've done some track days in the USA. Do I want to go racing again in America on the Yamaha R7? There is a huge part of me that wants to do that. There are some obstacles to overcome. I need to spend more money on more parts to get the bike ready to go racing. There is commitment to spend that time to go and do it. Do I want to go racing, or do I want to just carry on doing track days? You can have your input in the comments below. I've got my own thoughts on that. I think I can do it. I think I can spend that money. I think I can go and do this in 2025. But it's literally 50-50 at this point. I'm having great enjoyment of just doing the track days. I've already raced. I don't need to tick that box, but there is something, when you've raced a motorcycle against your peers, there is something that never leaves you, never, ever, ever leaves you. And that is the experience of doing it. Whether you come first or whether you come last, to go there and compete, you have my ultimate admiration. I don't care if you're first or last. If you are racing a motorcycle, you will always have my admiration. It's not something you can do lightly. There's a lot of investment of money, time, effort, preparation, and emotional turmoil, I guess you could call it, to go and race. Not everyone feels that, I get it, but I would say a large majority of people who go race would feel that. Do I want to put myself through that all over again? I don't know. And that's what I'm going to be surmising over the winter period here in 2024 into 2025. So stay tuned. It might happen, but it might not happen. And I'm just going to have to think about it over a few whiskeys, make that decision of what we're going to do in 2025. But I just wanted to just cover off where I've come from for those of you that haven't followed. If all of my videos of these, by the way, still in my archive. If you scroll through my videos past, where I was working on cars for a bit, you'll see a lot of these videos. You can go back and look at them. They're still there on my channel. The question being, do I want to go through all that again? I don't know. There's a huge part of me that wants to, but I'm facing some obstacles in order to do that. So anyway, if you can like and subscribe, then that might give me some inspiration. If you can comment, please do so. I had a great time doing all of these things, and I just wanted to share my story a little bit. Thanks for watching so far. I know it's been a long one, but I appreciate it and wish you all the best in whatever you are doing on a motorcycle. Or if you're thinking about it, then my advice is just do it. You know, go ahead and experience these things, and you'll have a great time. But anyway, thanks very much for watching. I hope to hear some of your thoughts in the comments and appreciate your time. But I'm going to sign off for now, and I'll see you in the next video.